Okay, let's get started. Good morning, and thank you for attending this webinar on ProQuest Dialog Search Basics. I'm Ted Karen at the ProQuest Dialog Help Desk. You may have had some experience already using ProQuest Dialog, or maybe even with the old Dialog product, but today's presentation is designed so that you don't need any prior training. We're going to start from the bottom up. We're going to take a look at some of the ProQuest Dialog features and functionality. We'll introduce you to what the product looks like, sort of get the feel of it and how it works, and you'll begin to get the idea of how you can best use ProQuest Dialog to get the search results that you want. As you'll see initially here, but even more so in ProQuest Dialog beyond the basics, there's quite a bit of flexibility in how to go about doing your search so that you can pick the workflow that's going to best suit your needs for any particular search you're doing. I am a big believer that the best way to learn ProQuest Dialog is to actually use it. And in that regard, I would remind you that there is never a charge for doing searches on ProQuest Dialog. You can sit and search on it and play with it all day long, and there will not be a charge until you actually choose some records you want to download, and then you go ahead and download them. And as we'll see, you will be told at that point what the charge is going to be, and you have a choice of whether to go ahead and download them or not. So you shouldn't hesitate to just use the product. You're not going to break it. Just try to get the feel of it. But before you can do that effectively, you're going to want to know some of the basics of how the product works, what the commands are. So we're going to show you some of that, and we're going to spend a good bit of the hour doing live demos for the reason that I mentioned. But we are going to start with a slideshow. We're going to look at some slides that tell us about the settings and the search syntax, the basics of how to do a search. But the first thing I want to do is to show you how to get help, because you're always welcome to give us a call here at 800-3-DIALOG or to drop us an email at customer@dialog.com. But a lot of people prefer self-help, and we want you to know that there's plenty of help right there on the site. Here are some of the URLs that you can use, but although there are these various URLs, all you really need in order to find help is to be able to go to the login page, which perhaps you've been to. So let's start there. This is where you log in. It used to be search.proquest.com/professional. They've only recently changed it to dialog.proquest.com/professional, but really either one will continue to work. So even before you log in, I'm not going to log in just yet. Instead, I'm going to direct your attention down to this link here, Find Training and Resources. There are a number of links here that say Contact or Contact Us, but what I'm going to suggest instead is that you scroll down and on the right side get to where you see the guy with the headset. This is a good place to get started because first of all it gives you the phone numbers. This number here is, as I said, 800-3-DIALOG. The people here at the help desk in North Carolina are very happy to help you. We're all very experienced using ProQuest Dialog. You can also drop us an email at customer@dialog.com. That will open up a ticket at our end that one of us will promptly pick up, and we'll get right to work on it. Also here, view training resources. That is where you would go to sign up for these webinars. Scrolling down, and there's a lot of good material here, but the next thing in particular that I want to call your attention to is the database ProSheets. If you used the old Dialog, you might remember the blue sheets. This is the equivalent on ProQuest Dialog, and the ProSheets are the authoritative source for all the information you need about how to use a particular database. Here we see a list of all of the databases. There's about 140 of them, 40 of those being for patents. They're in alphabetical order here. If you do patent searching, by the way, there's a link here where you can click and just jump down to a list of the patent databases alone. But the patent databases are also included in this master list up here. So you see United States patents full text there. There are, as I mentioned, 40 patent databases, but not that many blue sheets. The main reason for that is there's this ProSheet here for global patents, which are a whole set of databases, more than 30 of them, put together by the LexisNexis Univentio people. These are full-text databases in English from all kinds of different countries that have been translated. So there's not a separate ProSheet for Germany patents full text and France patents full text, because they all basically work the same. So those are the patent ProSheets. Let's take a look at one of these just to show you what kind of information you can find here. Biosis is one of the biomed databases, and it's one of the ones we're going to be using in our sample searches today. So let's take a look at that one. Each ProSheet will start out with a thumbnail description of what the database is about. This one tells us, for example, that it covers some 5,200 journals. More than 700,000 records are loaded on this database each year. I would say that's conservative. There'll be a description of the subject coverage. Even this is not really an exhaustive list for this database, but the point is that it covers a very broad range of all of the biological sciences. Each ProSheet will tell you how often the database updates. Biosis updates weekly. Some of them actually update daily or even more than once a day. Medline updates daily. You can also see here how far back the coverage goes. This is a database that goes back to 1926. So it is good not only for finding out the latest and greatest information, but also to do historical research, find out what medical science knew and when they knew it. The coverage is international. This section of the ProSheet is a good thing to know also, the document types. For example, Biosis is one of the databases that covers conferences and meetings. Not all of the biomed databases have that. Embase is another one that's good for conferences. Conferences are often the kind of record where you can get really the cutting edge information. Scrolling down, the next thing you'll see in a ProSheet is a sample record. If it's a full text database, you'll see a sample full text record. Biosis is one of the databases that has citation type information or bibliographic information plus an abstract. So that's what we see here. What we see here on the ProSheet that isn't in the actual record is next to each section of the record is what we would call the field code. For the title, it's TI. For the author, it's AU. Pub is the publication name. AB is the abstract, and so on. The purpose of those is that you can limit your search to only a specific field. In fact, we'll do that a little bit in the advanced search that we do a little bit later this morning. So that's the usefulness of these field codes. Some of them are common to all the databases like these, but others may be unique to the particular database. MJCN for major concept. You can see that there are a lot of these codes, but there's probably no single record that's going to use all of them. So the next thing you see in the ProSheet is a list alphabetically of all of the fields that can go into a record in that database. And these are a very handy reference because they show you not only each of the codes and what they mean, like AB for abstract, and there's a brief description over on the right side, but it will also show you a sample search using that field. So in this example, if we wanted to use the command mode to do a search for the exact phrase age-related macular degeneration, in the abstract part of the records, this is how you would do that. And so you see an example of how to search within each of the fields. You may not know until checking the ProSheet that you can search not only by author name, but also by first author. That would be FAU. You may want only the records that the person is the first named author in, because sometimes there are a whole lot of authors. You have CAS registration numbers and some of the other more unusual things here, and it goes through all of them. Under that, you see the limit options. In advanced mode, which we'll take a brief look at, using one of these limits, like humans, for example, is a simple matter of putting a check mark in a box next to the word humans. But you may also want to do that type of limitation on your search so that you're only getting Biosis records about humans when you're using the command search language. So the ProSheet shows you how to do that also. In this case, it would be human parentheses yes. The lookup lists are a very useful tool. We'll look at more in Beyond the Basics. An author name or a company name would be good examples of those. And we will be taking a look at the narrow results by filters. These are a really handy and easy to use tool that help you to kind of mine information from your results list and also to limit your initial results in various ways. We'll take a look at how to do that. And finally, at the end of each ProSheet, you'll see a brief description of the document formats that are available, both in the online view and in terms of what you would see when you go ahead to download a record. So that's what the ProSheets are about. Getting back to our main support page and scrolling down from the ProSheets, the next section I want to call your attention to right here as part of the basics is Essential Tools. When you first get to it, you might find it collapsed, so you just click the plus sign. And these self-guided modules are actually little movies that show you how to do particular tasks. But I particularly want to call your attention to the search solutions and the how-do-Is. They're similar in a way in that each of them is a presentation of a series of screenshots showing you step by step by step exactly how to do something. In the case of the search solutions, they would be searches in different subject areas. So they're divided up by subject, like patents or pharma or engineering. And each of these is kind of a commonly requested or a frequently done search. And it shows you, some of these are fairly basic, how to search for an engineering subject, but some of them are fairly specific. One of the pharma ones is search for market share information on a drug. It's not necessarily obvious how to do that, but it can be done. And if you wanted to know how to do it, again, you can give us a call, but here is a nicely laid out guide step by step on how you would do that. Like all of the search solutions, it starts out with stating what the task is, in this case, search for market share information on a drug. It tells you which databases you will want to use. I'll show you in a couple of minutes how to get into your chosen databases. Then it gives you a summary of the commands that you would use, both using the command line mode. As I mentioned, there are different ways to do these searches, and also using advanced search, which is more of a form or template-based interface. And we'll take a look at that today. After this summary, it goes through each of them, and these have been very carefully, thoughtfully prepared. It goes through them step by step. Shows you with screenshots how to choose your database, how to decide initially whether you want to work in the advanced mode or in the command line mode. And then it goes through, again, using screenshots, how to do this search in command line mode, and under that, how to do it in advanced search. We're not going to go through this screen by screen, but I wanted you to know that these are there, not only in case you should want to do any of these searches that are described in the search solutions, but the other way that these are useful is for practice. Because as I mentioned, there is no charge just to practice doing searches. And so what you can do is to pick some of these search solutions that look interesting to you, and it takes probably 5 minutes to go through one of these. And that is one way to get yourself a little bit more comfortable with using the boxes and buttons that make up the interface. And it just takes you all the way through. So that is an example of a search solution. Then there are the how-do-Is. These are similar in that they're screenshots and so on, but these have to do with not searching, but with the interface. How to change databases, how to preview your search results, how to create a report. Some of these are things you will do only once in a while, creating an alert. That may be something that you don't do often, but when it comes time for you to do it, this is a handy way to get to a set of instructions on exactly how to do it, step by step. So those are the parts of our support page that I wanted to show you. At this point, let's get back to the PowerPoint, and we'll go through these few slides, and then we'll do some live searching. One of the default settings is called autocomplete. You type in a word like toxic, and you see some suggestions pop up for ways that you might complete that search. You may see toxic soil pop up and say, you know, that's exactly where I was going with that. And if so, You can just click on toxic soil and that will fill in automatically and it'll do the search for toxic soil. You may see these pop up and say, you know, this really isn't helping me. I know what I want to type in. So you can click on Turn Off Autocomplete, or you can just close it. You can also turn it off more completely in the Preferences, and we'll take a look at the Preferences in a couple of minutes. And that brings us to linguistics, which basically had to do with what happens when you type a word into a search form in ProQuest Dialog. What happens behind the scenes? What is it really going to search for? And the first thing to know is that ProQuest Dialog will automatically search for both singular and plural unless you tell it not to. If you type the word cat, it will also search for the word cats. This also works with irregular type plurals like child and children. If you type in children, it will also search for child and vice versa. You can turn this off, like all of these, in the Preferences. As to adjectives, if you type in a word like tall, it will also search for taller and tallest. I'll mention one that you might not think of automatically: good, better, and best. So if you type in good, it will search for better and best. So if you want to do a search for best laptops 2016, you might want to consider putting the word best in quotes, because that's the way to limit the search to exactly the word best. Otherwise, you'll also find yourself getting why tablets are better than laptops or good deals on laptops. The way you can make it specific or exact is by putting quotes around your word. The other function that will happen automatically behind the scenes, unless you turn it off in Preferences or by using quotes, is the search engine will look for both British and American spellings. This comes up more often than you might guess. The word color. If you type in C-O-L-O-R, you will not miss records from Britain where they spell it C-O-L-O-U-R. It will search for them automatically. If you happen to be in Great Britain or from Great Britain and you spell estrogen starting with an O, you will also get the records where estrogen starts with an E. Now, as I mentioned, you can turn off each of these behind-the-scenes searches by turning them off in the Preferences, or you can put them in quotes, and that will make it into an exact search. The other thing that the quotation marks can be used for is to search for an exact phrase. So book in quotes will make sure you don't search also for books. But if you want to search for the cat in the hat, all you need to do is to put it in quotes. This used to be more complicated. You'd have to search for the word cat within 2 words before the word hat and things like this. Now it's much more intuitive. It's much easier to remember and to do. You just put it in quotes and it'll search for that exact phrase. Just remember that because you're using quotes, it will not search for the cats in the hats. We're going to look at truncation in a minute, but in terms of quotes, know that truncation will work inside of the quotes. The quotes don't turn off truncation. So the basic truncation mark in ProQuest Dialog is the asterisk, as we'll see. So if you put universal design asterisk inside of quotes, it'll search for exact phrase. It won't search for design universal, but it will search for universal designs, universal designation, universal designing. So that brings us to the Boolean and logical operators. ProQuest Dialog uses all 3 of them: and, or, and not. And is very much what it sounds like. If you search for cat and dog, you will only get records where both of those words are in there. If you search for cat or dog, you will get records that have cat but not dog. You'll get records that say dog, but cat is not in there. So using or is going to give you more results than using and. You can also refine your results with not. You might create a nice big set of records using and or, but then you don't want the ones that have a particular word in them. If so, that's what not is for. I would suggest, if you're combining and, or, and not, put the not at the end of your search statement or at the end of your strategy. That's the way it works logically, and that's the way it'll work for you in the way that you want it to. Some people want to save on every possible keystroke. If you just put 2 words, like the word cancer followed by the word research, and will be implied. It's going to search for cancer and research. So you don't really have to type the word and. But that's the way it's going to work if you just put two words with no quotes. And that brings us to the proximity operators. The three operators we looked at initially are and, or, and not. But sometimes and isn't good enough, because if you search for cancer and research, you might get some records where cancer appears very near the top of the record, but the word research isn't mentioned until the end of the record, and they're really not used in connection with each other. So you may want to control how close together the words are. That's a good way to make your search more focused and make sure you're getting what you're looking for. And that's what the near connector is for. You can use it in connection with a number. If you do so, normally you would abbreviate it, just n/ followed by a number. So you can do n/10. So if you did cancer near/10 or n/10 research, you would get any records where the word cancer appears within 10 words of research, but they could be in either order if you use near. If you don't use a number, if you just use the word near, then it's going to search for records with up to 4 words in between. You can also specify that you don't want there to be any words in between. That would be near/0 or n/0. If you do cancer n/0 research, that would get the phrase cancer research, but would also get research cancer, as in people who research cancer. So near is in any order. Sometimes you may want to specify which word comes first, and in that case, that brings us to the final one of our proximity connectors, which is pre. It works very much like near, except that if you use pre, they have to be in the order that you type the words. So you can use it together with numbers. Cancer pre/10 research, that means there can be up to 10 words in between, but they have to be in that order. If you use pre-0 or pre/0, that is almost the same thing when you think about it as searching for the exact phrase, because you got to have the word cancer followed immediately by the word research with nothing in between. So it's almost like doing the exact search with quotes, but the one difference to be aware of is that, again, if you use quotes, it's not going to retrieve cancer's researches, or if the word cancer was spelled differently in England, it wouldn't retrieve that because you're using quotes. If you want to be able to still get the automatic plurals or something like that, or variant spellings, you would go with this method, pre/0, and that maintains the flexibility of the searching behind the scenes. And that brings us to truncation. We're almost done with the slideshow part of it, and we'll get into some live searching. The basic truncation, and most of the time, and this will be your choice, is the asterisk. If you put an asterisk before or after, or even in the middle of a word, it will allow there to be up to 10 characters in place of the asterisk, or there might be none. It'll work that way too. So if you put asterisk toxic asterisk, it will retrieve the word toxic, but it would also retrieve cytotoxicity. Sometimes you want to control it, the truncation, so that you don't want as many as 10 to be there. You might want to allow there to be only 2, or you might want to allow up to 25 or something. There are 2 ways to do that. One, shown here, is you put an asterisk followed by a number and put that inside of brackets. And the other is to use a $sign followed by a number. So either of these is going to retrieve mono followed by up to 15 characters. So that would get, for example, this long chemical term, which you wouldn't get if you put mono asterisk, because there's more than 10 characters here after mono. If you use quotes around a term and you're using this type of truncation where you want to control the number of characters, then you want to use the method with the brackets and the number. You wouldn't use the $sign. Truncation can be used in the middle of a word, as I mentioned. Let's take a look at the question mark. Now, don't be confused here, please, especially if you use the old dialog. Question mark used to be used the way we now use an asterisk. In ProQuest Dialog, each time you put a question mark, there has to be a character there. And if you put more than one question mark, there has to be that exact number of characters. So if you have 2 question marks followed by toxic, that will pick up detoxic or cytoxic, but it will not get toxic. So the question marks have a very specific function. There are times when this comes in handy, when this is exactly what you want, but don't use it as your standard method of truncation. The order of processing, we've talked about and, or, and not, and pre and near. Parentheses are something you want to use around any words that you or together. You don't need to memorize this, but it's good to be aware that there's a definite order in which the search engine will apply these different ways of connecting words. And here's an example of why. As I said, and, or, and not are processed in that order. So if you just type the words dog or cat and food or nutrition, you or I can look at that and know what it is that we're trying to do. We're looking for records with either of this type of animal and that also use one of these two words that basically mean food. But if you just type it this way with no parentheses, the search engine is going to apply and first. So that means it's going to search for records with cat and food, and it will retrieve that, but it will also retrieve all the records that have dog and all the records that have nutrition. This is going to get too many hits. This is not what you want. In this example, the way to get what you want is to put parentheses around dog or cat. Put parentheses around food or nutrition. It's good practice to always put parentheses around any terms that you are oring together, and you definitely want to do that if you're combining or and in the same statement. So that's very important. That should become second nature for you in doing your searches, and you won't have any problems. So that's it. Let's move to our live searching and put some of this into action. Here we are back at our login page. Let's go ahead and log in. This account has been set up with what's called a project code or a billing code, but I'm allowed to ignore it. Sometimes your administrator will have set up your account so that you have to put in the name of your client or the name of your project here. It's good for billing purposes, but I'm going to skip it. So here we are on kind of the landing page. This is probably very much like what you first see when you log in. Your administrator may have changed this so you don't see quite as many boxes, but this is probably pretty much what you get. So let's take kind of a walking tour around this page. You see basic search here is in black. That's because we're on the basic search page. That's just one simple box, again, like Google. Advanced search is, we'll take a look at that in a little while. That's a template or a form that you fill in. Command line is more for advanced searchers, although it really is just a bigger box, but it's for doing more complex searches. Cost estimate. Now, as I mentioned before, you will see your costs, what it's going to cost you to download a record before you download it. And then you get to choose, do I download this or not? But you also may want to keep a record for yourself of how much you've spent in the session. If so, you can go to this link up here when you're all done with your session and download a little spreadsheet that will show you how much you spent that session, and you can keep that for your records. Administration is just for the person at your office who's the administrator. I do offer a webinar on using the ProQuest administrative module for those of you who are interested in that. English, it says here, this is where you can choose the language, just kind of on the fly. We'll look at help in a minute, but let's take a look at preferences. So here on the General Interface tab, you can make some choices like this. You can let the browser choose your language. That's the default choice. But if you want to search in one of these other languages, that's all doable on ProQuest Dialog. We start on the basic search page, but you can change that and change it back if you like. You might have noticed that we're in 99 databases. That's all the general databases, but you can instead change which databases you're in automatically when you first log in. This is where you can change how the months and years are displayed. When we get to looking at a results list, we'll see that I have mine set up so we look at the brief view of the results, but you can also set this up to automatically see the detailed view right away, and I'll show you what that looks like. You can set this up so that your results are sorted initially by relevance, meaning these would be the ones that use your search terms the most, but instead you can set it up so that you'll automatically see the newest records first or the oldest records first. You can also change that on the fly after you've done your search. This is the customization of the things that we looked at before. If you don't want to include US and UK spellings, just uncheck it. If you don't want to automatically search for plurals, just uncheck this. A lot of people would uncheck autocomplete. Some people like that feature, some do not. If you don't want it, you can uncheck it here and then just click Save Preferences, and that will go away the next time you log in. Citations are more of interest to academic searchers, I think, than to corporate or business searchers such as ourselves. But you can choose a particular annotation style here in your preferences, and email you'll generally want to get as HTML. So those are the general preferences. There's also a tab here for database shortcuts, and we're going to look at that in just a little while. Here is the help. There's a lot of good tips here. How to do a basic search. This is kind of a mini course here all in itself. This gets into some advanced topics like thesaurus, which we would look at in Beyond the Basics. So you can always get to the help that way. Personally, I kind of like the search tips, and I'll show you why. If you click on search tips, it's kind of similarly helpful material, but it gets into some more detail on certain things. And I like the way when you click on tips, you automatically see a link to the ProSheets. So this is a handy way to get to the ProSheets while you are searching. I know I find myself the time when I most want to see the ProSheets is while I'm doing a search. And that's the easiest way to get to them. Look for the link for tips, and you'll get this window pop up that has the ProSheets. Some of these other things here, like the from database command and the mesh and embase codes, we would look at if you would like to take the Beyond the Basics webinar. So that's about it on what you see across the top of the page. When you go to do a search, the first thing you'll want to do is decide what databases you want to be in. And there are a few different ways to do that. As we saw, at the moment we're in all 99 of the general or non-patent databases. One way you can choose which databases you want is to use these industries here. The content people have put together groups of databases based on topics. There's a lot of overlap here, like pharmaceutical and biomedical is very similar to healthcare, but they're not all exactly the same. You've got your engineering type databases, automotive. Let's look, for example, at aerospace. If I hover over it, I'll get this link come up. And if I click on it, I am now in only the 28 aerospace and defense databases. I can see which ones they are by clicking there. And instead of seeing all 99 of them checked, I've only got those 28. Now, I'm not stuck with these necessarily if I don't want to be in all these. I can select all the databases if I want. I might decide I only want kind of the hard engineering databases if I'm searching aerospace. These are more like business databases. And if I'm not interested in the business aspects of aerospace, I can uncheck those and then go down here and click Use Selected Databases, and then I'll only be in those 25 databases. You can, for that matter, just select, as I said, all of the databases just by doing this. Or you can be in all those and just deselect the ones that you don't want, and then click here on Use Selected Databases. A lot of people will routinely just search in all 99 databases. There's no extra charge for doing that, but choosing your databases is one way to get it more focused. And the last way that you can choose which databases to be in is using a shortcut. If you go into the same group of databases that are kind of your favorites all the time, this is something you may want to work with. I'm going to click on it here. These are shortcuts that I've created in the past. Each of these is a particular group of databases. We're going to use the Biomed 4 databases in a little while. But let's look at how you create one of these. And for that, we go back to Preferences. Remember, I pointed out that there's a database shortcut tab here. And this is where you can create these things. So here are the ones I have already. Let's say that we want to create one for civil engineering. I click Add Shortcut. I call it Civil Engineering or something like that. And then I would just go through this list of databases and decide which ones I want. Civil Engineering Abstracts. EI Compendex is a good one. Iconda is good. And let's choose Inspec. So I click Save, and now I have created a new shortcut. So I'd be able to go to that shortcut and go into just that group of databases. If I decide I want to change what is in here, I can go to Modify here and change which ones are included. I can add or subtract some, or I can just delete this group of databases altogether. I'm going to use these 4 biomed databases. We can see which 4 they are by clicking here. We're in Biosis and Derwent Drug File and Embase and Medline, 4 of the most useful biomed type databases. And we're going to do this in basic search. And I'm just going to type in here, open paren, cancer or neoplasm, close paren, within 3 words of treatment or therap, asterisk. So we get therapy or therapists or therapeutic. And to run that search, we click on this magnifying glass icon. And here we have our results list. It's a gigantic set of records. In that sense, this is not a very good search, but it does show us how it works. And I want to show you some of the things that you can do once you get to the point of having your results list here. One thing you can do is limit the date range. You can use these sliders, or you can use this link here. You can even pick a very specific date if you want to. It gives you an example of how to do it. That's often useful like in a patent search. Or you can just put a year. And when I click Update, this will create a new set that is limited to only that range of years. And it's still a lot of records, but it shows you how that works. The terms that we searched on are highlighted. They would be highlighted in the record if we were looking at the record, but right now we're just looking at the titles. This is the brief view that I referred to before. If I click on Detailed, I'll see a little bit more information. How much more information depends on which databases you're in. Some of them will show you quite a bit. Here we see a portion of the abstract for the Medline records. But depending on which database you're in, you can get some really useful info at no charge whatsoever, just by clicking on Detailed View. Other things you can do with the results list. Let's go over here to the right. You can resort them. These are sorted by relevance, but I can change this so that I'm seeing the most recent records on top or the oldest records on top. Then I would click Sort, and that would create a new set that is sorted. Change database order. This is something that you may well want to do, particularly in this type of database. By default, they're simply sorted by alphabet. And what this is about is a lot of records, a lot of articles appear in more than one database. And if they're in more than one database, this shows us how ProQuest Dialog is choosing which one to keep and which ones to not show you because they're duplicates. But this order really doesn't work for me because Medline is down at the bottom. And Medline, for one thing, is the cheapest of these databases. None of them are extravagant, but Medline is definitely cheaper. So if a record is in all these, I want to keep the Medline version. So what I do is to type the number 1 there instead of 0, hit Enter, and now it's back up at the top. And as you can see, there's no preference below this line. I don't really care what order these are in. I just want to make sure Medline is up on top. I click Apply Preferred Databases, and this creates a new set that has been sorted differently with regard to the deduplication, so that we're keeping the Medline record wherever possible. The next thing down along this right-hand column of things you can use to work with your results list, you probably are not going to want to include duplicates, but this is the narrow results by section. We sometimes call these the result filters. Let's look at author, for example. And what this is going to be is a list of all the authors that are in this set of records. It shows you the first half dozen or so initially, but if you click on more options, you get this pop-up here, and they're sorted by which one has the most. For some reason, this particular set of records has a lot of anonymous records, but apart from that, this is the author who has the most articles in here. This might be really useful if you're trying to identify an expert in a particular topic, whether it's engineering or medical science. You're looking for somebody maybe to consult with for a trial. This is a way to see who are the big writers on the topic. If you prefer, you can make the list alphabetical. And then once you have that list, you can save it and put it in your file. You can save it as a Word type file, an RTF, or a PDF. Let's take a look at this as a spreadsheet. There is no charge for this either, because we have not downloaded any actual records. So this is a nice way to do what they call data mining. And because this is a spreadsheet, we can resort this by author name or by count. And we have all this information about the records that come up using that search at no charge. And this in itself can be very useful. But besides just the data mining and seeing what's in here, you can also use any of these narrow by options to actually limit your search. Publication title, maybe we want to get rid of some of the titles. Maybe we don't want the European journal. If so, we can exclude it and click narrow my results. Another one you can use that way is subject. Again, we go to more options to bring everything up. Putting these alphabetically might be helpful here. Let's say that in this group of records about cancer research, let's say we don't want the ones about breast cancer for whatever reason. We've already done that research, perhaps. So we can exclude those. You can use either include or exclude. I wouldn't try to use both at the same time. So we check those off. Narrow my results. And so we can use these result filters over here, these narrow by filters, to modify the records that we've got. These are very effective as a way to kind of tinker with what you've got initially with your initial search result. It's very flexible, and I would encourage you to kind of get yourself familiar and comfortable with those. A very good way to work with your search. Now that we have this set of results, other things we can do. We can save this search. Maybe we think we're going to want to redo it next month. Maybe we have to go to lunch or go to a meeting and we want to pick up where we left off. It's up here, Save Search. Ordinarily, I would recommend saving all the searches you've been doing. And you give it a name like cancer research. Project code if you like, save it. This just tells you that there is no charge for this. There used to be a charge in the old dialog. There is no charge for saving as many searches as you want. So now that we've done that, but if we go up to My Research, here are the searches. And these are all saved searches. So if I want to rerun this, I'd want to start with a clean slate. I'd want to delete my old searches, and I'll show you how to do that. But all I have to do is click on this, and it will rerun everything. We've done 4 searches so far. If we want to delete those, we can change the order of them, by the way. But if we want to delete them, do that and delete. So I've deleted the search that we did, but I'm just going to redo this real quick and show you how to do a download. And then we'll do a quick advanced search and we'll wrap up for the day. For downloading, there is one other thing I'd like to show you, which is creating an alert. Suppose you get all these results and you say, okay, I'm all up to date on everything that there is to know about this topic, but I would like to know when new articles come out that meet these search criteria. That's what an alert is for. It's an automatic search that the system runs for you every week or every month or every day if you want, and sends them to you by email. That's what an alert is for. So if we want to create an alert based on this strategy, we just click on there, and all we have to do is give it a name. ProQuest Dialog really walks you through this in a very easy way. If we want to add another email address of somebody it goes to, we do it there. We can choose whether this runs weekly or monthly, or depending on your database, you might want to even get it daily. You can decide what day of the week you want to get it. This has to do with whether you want to get an email even if there are 0 hits. I personally like to get an email just so I know that it's running. This is where you can decide if there are old records that were initially published some time ago, but they were just added to the database. Do you want those? Those would be called historical items, or do you not want those? You can decide that here. That's about it. Click Continue. It shows you what the pricing is on alerts. You wouldn't really want to run this alert in all 4 databases, so I'm going to cancel. But I wanted to show you how easy it is to set up an alert in ProQuest Dialog. So let's export some records. There are 2 things you can use. Download all results. You don't want all these records, obviously. It's way too many, although you can get up to 4,000 at a time. So instead, we're going to use Export Save, which works just like download all, except that with Export Save, you pick which records you want by putting check marks here. Then when you click on Export Save, you get this pop-up window. I'm going to suggest deselect items when done. That way you don't download these same records again, should you decide to download additional records later in the session. Instead of results listing only, which is pretty much just the info we're looking at, this is where you decide how big a record you want. There's no full text in these databases, but let's go for a citation abstract. We'll leave these checked off so we can see what they look like, and we'll check Show Hit Highlighting. Click Continue, and this will give us the price preview, $7.30 for these 2 records. Click Continue, and it'll go ahead and download those records. I could also choose, using the other drop-down box, whether I want PDF or RTF, which is like Word. And this is what one of these nice reports looks like. The table of contents, these are actually links. If I want to jump down to the second record, I can click here, which can be helpful if you have a long list of records. Under the table of contents, it shows me what the search was. This can be very useful. Sometimes you want not just your results, you want to have a permanent record of how you got those results. You want that in your file. So this will do that for you automatically, just using the check mark. And then these are the records themselves, and they're laid out very nicely. They're very readable. We can save this. In Chrome, it automatically got saved, and I click down here to open it up, and I can resave it with a different name. In Firefox or Internet Explorer, you would get a little pop-up that asks, do you want to open it or do you want to save it? Let's go to Advanced Search in our remaining minutes and see how to do a similar type search in this template type form. So I'm going to again put cancer or neoplasm. By the way, I don't really need the parentheses when I'm using this form, but it's a good practice to use it. So let's say I want to look for that only in the title. I can change this to or, but here I want to use and I'll put treatment or therapy. I'll leave the parentheses off to show you that it doesn't make a difference. And let's say I want those to be in the abstract. I'm going to search. In advanced mode, I can also use this button that says Preview Result Counts, and instead of going directly to a results list, that would show me the sets that we've created down at the bottom. You can see here while that's running that you can use those limits like human. Let's do one more search and then look at how to combine searches. I'll search here for breast. All right, we go to recent searches, and what we want to do here is combine set 2 and set 3. And there's a handy box for it here. We could type this just in a regular search box, but when we go here to the recent searches, this is a convenient place to do these recombinations of your sets because you can see what all your sets are here and just use this little box for that. And this is going to create a set that requires that the search criteria of both of these sets be met. So it's going to be a smaller set. When you add sets together, you're likely to end up with a new set that is smaller. And the last thing we're going to do is return to the cost estimate. I'll show you how to download your cost, and we'll finish up for today. There we are. So let's go to cost estimate. We took a look at this initially. This shows what we did, what we downloaded, and what I can do is to click here, and that will download a little spreadsheet that shows what our costs were. So that is our introduction. That is the basics. I hope I have struck a good balance for you that's been useful for you in terms of trying to get your feet wet, show you some things that you can use without kind of throwing too much at you all at once. But I would encourage you to take Beyond the Basics. We offer that at least twice a month, and you'll learn a lot more. Thanks again, and enjoy the rest of your day.